This is a budget that delivers to people who've supported this government in the past. It's a business class budget. What it's doing is moving those in business class up to first class, while those down in cattle class start paying for their lunch. And this government sometimes attempts to portray this party opposite as a party which wants to spend money. Well, this is borrowing. This is borrowing to cut the top tax rate for those at the top end. And we've seen this in the past. This is the sort of policies that Ronald Reagan introduced in the United States. It was just strategic deficit. All it did was rob the poor to pay the rich. And what it is voodoo economics. Voodoo economics. Supposedly, the economy is going to recover to pay for this. Well, look at the budget tables. The balance of payment deficit, which has never been in surplus in this country since 1973. 1973, since we were last as a nation in the black. This is a government which supposedly says it wants to see export-led growth. Well, the balance of payments deficit goes this year from $4.9 billion, next year to $8.9 billion, the following year to $13.1 billion, the year after that to $15.7 billion according to the Treasury projections, and the year after that $17.2 billion. So where is the export-led growth that's going to reduce our balance of payment, the measure of us as a nation exporting as opposed to what we import? Nicky Wagner, List MP, last night said this budget was a cracker. Well, she should explain that to the 76% of people in my electorate of Christchurch Central who earn less than $40,000 a year. They won't be calling this budget a cracker. She should explain that to the Manufacturers and Exporters Association based in my electorate of Christchurch Central, who said in a headline statement of this budget, the rhetoric does not match the reality. The rhetoric does not match the reality. The Chief Executive, John Wiley, saying the changes to property tax, corporate tax rate and GST go some way, but they fall a long way short of what the tax working group recommended, and also says that the removal of the depreciation loading for plant and equipment will be detrimental to business investment. That's why we're seeing that balance of payments gap deteriorate hugely under this budget. We are told, or were told, that there was a need to cut the top tax rate from 38% to 33% because that kind of gap encouraged people to move their tax into company structures to avoid the top tax rate. So what does this budget do? It cuts the company tax rate back to 28%, so the differential between the top tax rate and the business tax rate is still the same 5%. Still the same 5% differential there, with obviously every incentive for people to move their tax into their company where that is possible. We are told that this is supposed to be about driving down the issues of tax shelters. The real impact of this budget does come around GST and what is yet to come, because as Treasury forecasts tonight, we are going to see inflation nudging 6% in the year ahead. 6%, which will simply erode the benefits of the tax cuts being introduced at the middle and lower end of the income. And I noted a housing commentator last night on the Campbell program ask about where was the stimulus in this budget for new homes, for new home building, because of course GST is going to apply to new homes. They're going to be costing an extra 2.5%. An extra 2.5%. Already the housing market is less than buoyant. In fact, it's dead flat. The projections are that this budget's going to see a 8 to 10% depreciation of the existing housing market. Where that will fall most heavily will be on the new housing market, and this budget has done nothing to stimulate the building sector. In fact, it's taking it backwards, and we will see no or much fewer in the way of new houses built because there is nothing in this budget to do anything to encourage younger New Zealanders, first-home buyers, into their first home. In fact, absolutely the opposite. And before members opposite attempt to suggest that tax cuts will stimulate this, what will $1,000 or $2,000 of tax cut do to a young couple trying to buy their first home? That will be absolutely eroded anyway by the GST, but if there's anything left, what will that contribute to the ability to service a mortgage or to put down a first home deposit? Absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, of course, the budget supposedly trumpets the increases in health and GST. Those are worth nothing with inflation of 6%.
Thank you, Mr.